Cold starts, short rides, stop-and-go traffic, and hard pulls near redline do more engine damage than most riders think, because those are the moments when the oil cushion gets thin and parts stop floating cleanly on that film. Your bike can sound fine, idle fine, even pull hard, and wear is still creeping in a little at a time. Look at any cam lobe, ring face, or bearing surface with your eyes and it seems smooth. Put that same surface under magnification and it looks nothing like smooth metal. It looks like a microscopic mountain range, full of sharp peaks and valleys. Those peaks are called asperities, and when two parts slide past each other, those tiny high spots are the first places that try to touch. When oil flow and pressure are where they should be, the engine works in hydrodynamic lubrication. That just means the parts ride on a very thin liquid film, so the metal stays separated and the load rides on the oil instead of the surface. That's the happy place. At steady speed, fully warm, with everything flowing right, oil does this job really well. The trouble starts when that film gets weak. Startup is a big one, because oil hasn't fully reached every loaded surface yet. Hard throttle can do it. Hot idling can do it. Repeated short trips are rough too, since the bike barely gets fully warm before it shuts back down. In those moments, the engine drops toward boundary lubrication, and now those tiny peaks start brushing and colliding instead of gliding past each other on a liquid layer. Motorcycles push oil harder than cars in a bunch of ways. You've got smaller oil volume, higher revs, tighter packaging, and more heat packed into less space. On a lot of bikes, that same oil also has to deal with the gearbox, which shears the oil, and the clutch, which adds its own contamination. So the oil isn't only protecting crank bearings and cams, it's doing several jobs at once, and it's doing them in a machine that gets worked hard. That wear doesn't show up as one dramatic failure most of the time. It shows up as scuffing on loaded surfaces, cam and follower wear, ring wear, a noisier top end, more oil use, and compression that slowly slips away. Riders usually don't catch it in the moment. They notice it later, when the engine sounds rougher, shifts worse, burns more oil, or starts asking for expensive parts. Once you see where the damage starts, in those short no-film moments, the Moly story starts making sense. And stick around, because near the end, I'm going to get very plain about what this can actually help with on a motorcycle, what changes you might notice, and what no additive will fix once the engine is already worn out. The old Moly idea didn't start as a performance trick. It started as survival. In early wartime aircraft, if an oil line or tank got damaged, the engine could lose lubrication fast, and a seized engine in the air often meant the pilot wasn't coming back. That's where molybdenum disulfide, MOS2, entered the picture as an emergency running aid. Its structure lets thin layers slide over each other a bit like stacked cards, so friction stays lower even after the normal liquid oil film starts breaking down. It wasn't magic, and it didn't save every engine, but if some protective material stayed on the metal surface, it could buy a little extra running time. In that situation, a little extra time mattered a lot. After the war, that idea moved into civilian lubricants and later into companies built around liquid moly products. The old lesson was simple. If oil film fails, surface protection still matters. But solid moly and suspension had limits. So as engines and oils got more advanced, engineers needed a cleaner way to deliver the same kind of help right where friction spiked. This is where riders get tripped up, because old school solid MOS2 and modern moly chemistry are not the same thing. The older approach used solid particles suspended in oil. Modern engine oils often use oil-soluble organomoly compounds, which dissolve into the oil instead of floating around in it. One common family is molybdenum dithiocarbamate. You don't need to memorize the name, but you should know the difference, because this is not about dumping random gray powder into your crankcase. Here's how it works in plain terms. When the engine is cruising easily and the oil film is healthy, that additive mostly rides along in the oil. But at the exact spots where heat and pressure spike, the cam nose, ring contact area, loaded bearing zone, places where the oil film gets very thin, the chemistry reacts at the surface. That tribochemical reaction leaves behind a very thin, low-friction film that helps the metal slide with less direct contact. So the protection shows up where the rubbing gets ugly, not everywhere all the time. That matters most during cold starts, traffic, hot, slow riding, repeated clutch work, and hard acceleration. In other words, the ugly real-world stuff. On an easy highway cruise, the engine may spend more time on a full oil film, so the Moly effect isn't the big story there. Boundary lubrication is the story. That's the zone this chemistry tries to help, and keep it in proportion. This doesn't give your bike extra horsepower in any meaningful seat-of-the-pants way, and it won't stop all wear. It reduces friction where the oil film gets weak. That's the job. A lot of Japanese engineering work leaned hard into this area because lower viscosity oils help efficiency. But thinner oils also raise the stakes at the surface when conditions get rough. If you want fuel economy, durability, and stable wear control together, additive chemistry matters a lot. So when people say Japanese engineers never skip this trick, what they're usually brushing up against is not some secret bottle passed around in a back room. It's the fact that many premium oils, including oils shaped by Japanese engine development, already use Moly-based friction modifiers in the additive package. Most riders just never read the product data sheet, and the front label usually doesn't explain much. There's one motorcycle-specific warning you need to know before you get excited. Friction reduction that helps cams, rings, and bearings can also create problems for a wet clutch if the product isn't meant for that use. A car engine with separate transmission oil plays by different rules. A shared-sump motorcycle does not. So the smart move is not adding Moly because you heard Moly's good. The smart move is matching the oil and any additive to the exact clutch system and spec your bike uses. In the next part, that's the 1-minute check that keeps this from turning into expensive guesswork. So what's the actual 1-minute hack? It's not some secret pour-in treatment, and it's not chasing whatever bottle some guy on a forum swears by. It's taking 1 minute at oil change time to check that your oil choice and any additive choice actually matches your bike's clutch design and the spec in the manual. That's it. Simple, boring, and way smarter than guessing. Start with the first question. Does your motorcycle use a wet clutch that shares oil with the engine? Most street bikes do. If it does, you cannot treat engine oil the same way you treat oil in a car, because that oil also has to let the clutch grab properly. If the friction characteristics are wrong, the clutch can start slipping under load, and that's not a theory problem. You'll feel it. Next, look for the JASO rating the manufacturer calls for, usually MA or MA2, on modern bikes with wet clutches. Those specs exist for a reason. They're meant to keep the oil inside a range that protects the engine, but still gives the clutch the friction it needs. If your manual calls for a certain viscosity in a JASO motorcycle spec, stick to that before you think about anything fancy. The safest move for most riders is choosing a motorcycle oil that already meets the manual and letting the oil company balance the additive package. If you want to use a Moly additive on top of that, slow down and read the label like you mean it. The product needs to clearly state wet clutch compatibility or motorcycle compatibility for shared sump use. If it doesn't say that, don't assume. Don't read car forms. Don't trust vague words like friction treatment or engine protector. And don't mix 2 or 3 additives because each one sounds smart on its own. Additive chemistry is a package. Too much of one thing can throw off the whole blend. My quick checklist is easy. Manual, clutch type, oil grade, JASO mark, additive compatibility, total fill volume, then final level check after the engine runs and settles. That whole process takes about a minute if you already have the bottle in your hand. 1 minute now can save you a lot of money later. There's also a warning sign riders ignore too often. If the clutch engagement feels different right after an oil change, if revs rise faster than road speed under load, or if shifting suddenly feels odd, stop experimenting. Drain it, replace it with the correct oil, and get back to a known setup. Don't keep riding and hope it sorts itself out. Do it right, and this habit gives the engine extra help in the rough moments without creating a new problem at the clutch. That's the whole idea. The smart part isn't using more chemistry, it's using the right chemistry for the bike under you. Now let's get very plain about the payoff because this is where a lot of videos get silly. If your bike responds well to a proper Moly-safe oil strategy, what you might notice is not some dramatic before and after transformation. You may get a smoother feel on cold start, a little less mechanical chatter from the top end, and better wear control during heat, traffic, or repeated hard use. Some riders also notice a steadier shift feel, especially when the oil is staying in its lane instead of getting hammered by conditions it wasn't meant for. That kind of improvement fits the way motorcycles get used in the real world. Think about a commuter bike that sees traffic lights, short rides, and heat soak every day. Think about an ADV bike crawling through slow technical sections with barely any airflow. Think about a sport bike that spends a lot of time getting yanked through the upper rev range. Those are not fantasy use cases. That's where the right oil package earns its keep, but there are hard limits, and you need to know them. Moly chemistry will not repair scored cylinders. It won't rescue worn bearings. It won't restore oil pressure if the pump or clearances are already gone. It won't unstick rings packed with neglect, and it definitely won't erase the damage from skipped oil changes. If the engine already has a mechanical fault, the fix is mechanical. No bottle gets around that. What this can do is reduce the wear rate in the moments that slowly age an engine. That's less exciting than miracle claims, but it's also real. Over a long stretch of ownership, less rubbing damage can mean fewer top-end problems, less oil consumption as parts stay in shape longer, and an engine that keeps its manners deeper into its life. That matters if you actually plan to keep the bike, not just flip it after a season. So the win is pretty simple. Don't chase magic bottles, chase correct oil, correct spec, and a clutch-safe additive strategy only when the product and the bike clearly support it. That's how you get the upside without creating new trouble. If you've got a bike in mind, drop a comment with the model, year, and oil spec you're running. Subscribe if you want more straight answers without the nonsense, and ride safe. One small check at oil change time can do more for engine life than a lot of expensive parts people bolt on without thinking. The parts inside your bike don't wear the most when everything is easy. They wear when the oil gets pushed thin, the load spikes, and the wrong product turns a protectable moment into surface damage that keeps stacking up ride after ride. So before your next oil change, grab the manual, confirm the viscosity, confirm the JASO spec, confirm whether the bike shares engine oil with the clutch, and only use a Moly product if it clearly says it works with that setup. That minute of checking is the whole hack. If you want, in the next video, I can break down motorcycle oil labels line by line so you can spot the right bottle in 10 seconds. Subscribe, smash that like button, and drop a comment with your bike and what oil you're using now.